Today, you're going to leave the presentation knowing exactly how to reverse the root cause of type 2 diabetes using your food as medicine instead of controlling the symptoms with medications, okay? Again, it's super important. We don't want to control, we want to reverse. So let's go ahead and get to the action. First of all, you need to understand what is insulin, how does it work, and what is the purpose of insulin in our bodies. Okay, um, I want to backtrack a little bit, and I want you to understand that type 2 diabetes is a condition that the symptom of type 2 diabetes is high blood glucose. Okay, that is what happens as a result of having type 2 diabetes. But what people fail to do is to understand what actually caused type 2 diabetes. What is at its root, what went wrong in order for these blood glucose levels to spike up and be chronically high. So this condition, the underlying condition behind type 2 diabetes is called insulin resistance, okay? And it happens when your cells, your muscle and liver cells more specifically, become blind to insulin. And insulin is a hormone that acts like a key that opens the door of your cells so glucose can go in. So yes, let me just have you paint a mental picture of how insulin works by explaining this picture. Imagine this is here on the left side, imagine that this is your muscle cell. Your muscle cell, when it comes to glucose metabolism, has two very important parts, an insulin receptor and a glucose channel. When insulin is present in the bloodstream, as I mentioned, it acts like a key that attaches to the insulin receptor. Think of the insulin receptor as the keyhole. So the key goes into the door and it opens it up so the glucose channel can open and glucose can go in. Okay, so this is just like a depiction of how it basically works. Literally think of it as like a key and a door, and the door opening up so glucose can go in. It is the most simple way to picture how insulin works. Now, when you are insulin resistant, the keyhole doesn't respond to the key. It's like you have the wrong keys. You actually you have the correct keys, but they are not doing their job. The door is not opening up. And the reason why this is happening is because there is a buildup. Okay, there's a buildup of fat that is actually that is disrupting insulin signaling at a cellular level. Okay, and when this happens, the door doesn't open and glucose stays in your bloodstream. The door didn't open, glucose cannot go into the cell, it cannot be used as energy, and it simply starts flowing through your bloodstream. And that is why when you check your blood glucose, it is high, because it never was able to get into the cell. And the reason why is because your cell became insulin resistant, which means that insulin and the insulin receptor were not communicating properly, and it basically became blind to insulin, and then the cell stopped working properly. That is what insulin resistance is. And how does this happen? Well, research has shown that the reason why this fat builds up inside of your tissues, inside of your muscle and liver cells, and just to backtrack, this amount of fat is not supposed to be stored in muscle and liver cells. Healthy muscle and liver cells do not have the capability of storing large amounts of fat. That is what adipocytes are for, which are your fat cells. But muscle and liver cells are not made to store fat. So research has shown that when an individual follows a diet that is high on saturated fats, especially coming from animal products, a diet that is high on refined carbohydrates, and a diet that is high on added sugars, it is the perfect trifecta for the accumulation of these lipid droplets, of these fat droplets inside of our cells. So here in this picture, you can see we just put some reference pictures that depict a normal high fat, high refined carbohydrate diet. And it leads to this accumulation of excess fat inside of our cells, which then interferes with this fat buildup, interferes with the insulin's ability to attach to the insulin receptor, as we spoke in the last slide. So when that happens, glucose cannot enter. It cannot enter the cell, and then that is a reason why blood glucose rises, right? But again, the problem was the diet. The problem was the insulin resistance that led to the excess fat buildup, that led to the the cell becoming blind to insulin. So that is the series of events that happened inside of your body. Now, one thing that people say is like, oh, now carbohydrates are bad for me. And the reason why people say that is because when they have type 2 diabetes and they eat a banana or a potato or a sweet potato or a high carb meal, then boom, their blood glucose skyrockets, right? So they go ahead and blame that last thing that they ate. They are like, oh, the banana is bad for me, the potato is bad for me, the brown rice is bad for me, so I'm not going to eat those anymore. But they fail to realize that what actually caused the insulin resistance is not the sweet potato, it's not the brown rice, it's not the whole complex carbohydrate. It is actually what they were eating prior to that. It is the diet high on animal products, high on refined carbohydrates, high on added sugars that caused the cell to be resistant to insulin in the first place. So yes, now that insulin resistance has built up on your cells, the moment that you put a carbohydrate in, then boom, blood glucose skyrockets. And that is because insulin metabolism and glucose metabolism has been disrupted at a cellular level. And what we do with our approach is to actually reverse this accumulation of fat that happened at a cellular level. So normal glucose metabolism can be restored so you can eat the healthful carbohydrates again, the brown rice, the sweet potatoes, the vegetables, the legumes, all of those healthful carbohydrates, you can eat them again and not experience high blood glucose anymore. As a matter of fact, those foods will help you reverse insulin resistance. Okay, so we are on teaching mode, and I would be very happy to explain this slide. So as I mentioned, insulin, it kind of works like a key, okay, right? That's how I explain how insulin works. Now, what I forgot to mention is that the pancreas is what makes this hormone. So the moment that you eat carbohydrates, the moment that you eat any form of carbohydrate, either complex or refined, whatever carbohydrate you put into your body, your pancreas senses that now glucose has entered the bloodstream and that it needs to secrete insulin in order to open the doors of the cell. So carbohydrate comes in, it transforms into glucose inside of your body. The pancreas gets alerted of this, and it secretes insulin into the bloodstream. And insulin is basically like a key that goes into every single cell, and it starts opening doors, and then glucose happily starts going in. That is in a healthy individual. However, when you have type 2 diabetes, it's the same thing going on. You eat the carbohydrate transforms into glucose inside of your body. The pancreas releases insulin, which are keys that go into the bloodstream, and then the doors of every single cell are just not opening up. And your pancreas is like, whoa, what just happened? I just released keys to open doors, and glucose is still high. I need to release more keys. And that is literally what your pancreas does. It makes more keys, releases into the bloodstream in hopes of bringing the blood glucose down. And it keeps doing that until the blood glucose has come down to normal levels again. However, the problem here is that you're overworking your pancreas. You're telling your pancreas to make excess keys. And that is a reason why some people, when they get recently diagnosed, their insulin levels are high, as well as their blood glucose. Both are high. Is because your pancreas is doing overwork, making more insulin, and your blood glucose is high because the keys that it's making, they're not working properly. Now, the problem with this is that the beta cells, the cells in the pancreas that are in charge of producing this insulin, they get tired. They get tired over time, and then they die. So insulin production goes like this over time. The longer you have type 2 diabetes, the lower the insulin production occurs. And this is because the beta cells are dying inside of the pancreas, making less and less insulin, right? So we want to avoid this. We really want to stop this condition at its tracks. So our cells can become insulin sensitive again. And so our pancreas doesn't have to make extra keys anymore, right? So that is what we are doing with our system, with our program. We're making your cells insulin sensitive, responding to insulin again. So when your pancreas releases this hormone, all these doors open up and glucose can go in and normal glucose metabolism just happens. That is what we do in our program.